In the crowded streets of 1922 Hell's Kitchen, New York, Irish immigrants built new lives while holding tightly to the food traditions that reminded them of home. And survival was often measured not in dollars, but in the warmth of a shared meal. One of the most common staples was boiled potatoes served plain, or with a bit of butter. Because potatoes were affordable, filling, and deeply rooted in Irish identity, cabbage simmered slowly with salt pork created a simple but nourishing dish that stretched small amounts of meat to feed large families. Irish soda bread baked in small tenement kitchens offered dense, hearty slices that could be eaten with tea or used to soak up stews. Oatmeal porridge was a frequent breakfast, providing warmth before long hours of labor on docks, construction sites, and city streets. Corned beef, though more accessible in America than it had been in Ireland, became a prized addition to meals, especially when paired with cabbage and root vegetables. Lamb stew, slowly cooked with carrots, onions, and potatoes, filled hallways with comforting aromas and reminded many of rural villages left behind. Split pea soup, made from dried peas and ham bones, was another economical favorite that could simmer all day while families worked. Black and white pudding appeared in some homes, particularly during special gatherings when traditional flavors felt especially important. Fried onions mixed into mashed potatoes created colcannon, a humble yet meaningful dish tied to memory and heritage. Fish, especially cod or herring, was inexpensive and often salted or fried, making it practical for crowded urban living. Thick slices of brown bread spread with dripping or lard served as quick meals for workers needing energy. Barley added to soups helped thicken broths and make small portions feed many mouths. Tea was not simply a beverage, but a ritual offering comfort, conversation, and a moment of rest amid hardship. Baked beans, influenced by neighboring communities, became part of weekly meals because they were cheap, filling, and easy to prepare in large batches. Rice pudding sweetened lightly with sugar offered children a rare taste of dessert during difficult times. Apple stewed with cinnamon provided affordable sweetness when fresh fruit was scarce. Pickled vegetables helped preserve food and added sharp flavor to otherwise plain plates. Shepherd's pie layered with minced meat and mashed potatoes turned leftovers into a satisfying dinner that wasted nothing. Liver and onions supplied iron and strength for laborers, though the taste was strong and not loved by all. Homemade broths made from bones and scraps ensured that nothing edible was thrown away. Pancakes made from simple flour, eggs, and milk appeared on Sundays when families tried to create a sense of celebration. Molasses or jam spread thinly on bread added small moments of pleasure to ordinary days. Hard cheeses, sliced carefully, were rationed to last through the week. Boiled turnips and carrots frequently accompanied meats, adding color and nutrition to the table. Simple egg dishes such as fried or scrambled eggs provided affordable protein when meat was too expensive. Pickled herring purchased from street vendors became a quick, salty snack for workers returning home late. Homemade meat pies wrapped in pastry were portable and practical for long shifts. Cured bacon fried crisp added smoky depth to many otherwise modest meals. Even plain boiled rice sometimes replaced potatoes when budgets were tight, showing how adaptability shaped immigrant kitchens. Despite financial hardship, these meals carried pride, resilience, and connection to Irish roots. Food in 1920s Hell's Kitchen was rarely extravagant, but it was deeply meaningful, reflecting sacrifice, determination, and community bonds. Families gathered around small tables in cramped apartments, sharing stories of Ireland, while children learned recipes that blended Old World tradition with New World necessity. Every pot of stew, every loaf of bread, and every cup of tea symbolized endurance in a neighborhood known for toughness and survival. Through simple ingredients, Irish immigrants nourished not only their bodies, but also their cultural identity, preserving flavors that would influence New York cuisine for generations to come. Life in 1920s Hell's Kitchen was defined by hard labor, crowded tenements, and the steady rhythm of immigrant families trying to secure stability in a new country, and food became both sustenance and silent comfort during uncertain times. Breakfast often began before sunrise with thick slices of soda bread toasted over small stoves and spread with butter when it was affordable, or simply dipped into hot tea when money was tight. Strong black tea brewed repeatedly from the same leaf-stretched supplies and created a daily ritual that anchored households in familiarity. Many families relied on large pots of Irish stew simmered with inexpensive cuts of beef or mutton combined with potatoes, onions, and carrots, because slow cooking made tough meat tender and flavorful. Leftover stew was reheated the next day, proving that nothing in these kitchens was wasted. Fried cabbage with bits of bacon fat added smoky flavor to simple vegetables and turned modest ingredients into satisfying plates. Dried beans soaked overnight and cooked with onions provided protein for families who could not afford meat regularly. Salt pork, stored carefully in small portions, was shaved into dishes to add depth without exhausting precious supplies. Fresh milk delivered locally was sometimes watered down to make it last longer for children. Oats purchased in bulk were transformed into porridge, sweetened lightly with molasses when available, offering warmth during cold New York winters. Street vendors sold roasted chestnuts and hot pies, which occasionally became affordable treats for working men heading home after long shifts. Simple sandwiches filled with leftover meat or cheese wrapped in paper were carried to construction sites and docks. Pickled cabbage and onions stored in jars brightened otherwise heavy meals and prevented food spoilage. In cramped apartments, during holidays, families prepared boiled ham with mustard sauce, elevating the table beyond ordinary fare and creating moments of celebration amid hardship. Homemade jam crafted from seasonal fruit was rationed carefully and spread thinly across bread to satisfy children's cravings for sweetness. Barley and lentils were added generously to soups, ensuring that even a small quantity of broth could nourish many mouths. Fish chowder made with affordable white fish potatoes and milk brought coastal Irish flavors into urban kitchens. Tripe and other organ meats, though not glamorous, were practical choices that delivered nutrition at low cost. Meatloaf seasoned with breadcrumbs and onions reflected adaptation to American ingredients while still honoring Irish cooking methods. Bangers, or simple sausages fried in cast iron pans, filled narrow hallways with savory aromas that neighbors instantly recognized. On Sundays, families sometimes pooled resources to prepare a larger roast dinner, symbolizing unity and shared struggle. Children were often given slices of bread dipped in tea as an evening snack, reinforcing the central role of bread in daily survival. Rice, imported and affordable, was occasionally boiled and mixed with milk and sugar to create comforting rice pudding. Fresh herbs grown in small window boxes added flavor to otherwise plain stews, demonstrating ingenuity in limited space. Even simple boiled eggs sprinkled with salt provided strength before demanding physical labor. Neighborhood bakeries run by fellow immigrants supplied crusty loaves when home baking was not possible. Cornmeal mush, influenced by American neighbors, appeared at breakfast tables, showing how cultures blended in Hell's Kitchen. Despite poverty, meals were served with dignity and gratitude, reinforcing bonds within families and among neighbors who often shared ingredients during difficult weeks. Food represented more than calories because each recipe carried stories of Ireland and hopes for the future in America. Mothers taught daughters how to knead dough and season broth, ensuring that traditions endured beyond the first immigrant generation. Fathers returning from long shifts found comfort in the predictable taste of stew and tea, grounding them after exhausting days. Even in cramped apartments, laughter often rose above the clatter of dishes, proving that resilience thrived beside hardship. Through careful budgeting, creative substitutions, and unwavering determination, Irish immigrants transformed humble ingredients into meals that sustained both body and spirit. Their tables may have been small and their portions modest, but the cultural richness embedded in every bite left a lasting imprint on New York's culinary landscape. As the 1920s progressed, Irish immigrants in Hell's Kitchen continued adapting their traditional foodways to the realities of urban American life, where rent was high, work was uncertain, and kitchens were often no larger than a closet. Breakfast remained simple yet filling, often consisting of fried potatoes cooked in leftover bacon fat, providing energy for men heading to factories, docks, and construction sites. Thick slices of bread dipped into hot tea were common, especially for children who needed something warm before school. Many households kept a large pot hanging over the stove where vegetable scraps, bones, and barley simmered into a nourishing broth that could be served at any hour. Salted cod, soaked overnight and then boiled or fried, was inexpensive and reminded families of coastal Ireland. On paydays, some families purchased small cuts of beef to prepare a hearty stew enriched with onions, carrots, and herbs grown in window boxes. Leftover boiled potatoes were sliced and pan-fried the next morning, ensuring nothing went to waste. Homemade dumplings added to soups created extra substance when meat was scarce. Women often bake simple sponge cakes for special occasions, using modest amounts of sugar to create rare sweetness in otherwise practical diets. Apples purchased from street markets were baked or stewed, extending their shelf life and providing natural dessert. Cured ham, saved carefully for Sundays, symbolize both faith and family unity, as relatives gathered around narrow tables. Pickled beets and turnips stored in jars brightened winter meals with sharp flavor and vibrant color. Simple gravy made from pan drippings was poured generously over bread or potatoes, transforming leftovers into comforting plates. Oat cake sometimes replaced bread, offering dense texture and long-lasting satiety. Neighborhood grocers extended small lines of credit, allowing families to buy flour, sugar, and tea until the next paycheck arrived. Fried fish sandwiches wrapped in paper became quick meals for laborers working double shifts. Mothers often prepared large trays of baked pasta, influenced by Italian neighbors demonstrating how cultures blended within the same crowded blocks. Boiled eggs mashed with mustard and spread on bread created affordable sandwiches for children. Lentil stew seasoned with bay leaves and black pepper offered warmth during bitter winter evenings when coal was expensive. Homemade custard made from milk, eggs, and sugar occasionally appeared as a treat during holidays. Even simple boiled cabbage drizzled with vinegar could feel satisfying after a long day of physical labor. Meat scraps purchased cheaply from butchers were minced and formed into patties, stretching limited budgets. Rice mixed with leftover vegetables formed practical skillet meals requiring only one pan and little fuel. Tea remained central, poured generously for guests and shared as a gesture of hospitality even among those with very little. Women exchanged recipes in hallways, discussing how to thicken stews or preserve vegetables more effectively. Community gatherings often featured shared dishes where each family contributed something modest yet meaningful. Children learned early how to peel potatoes, stir porridge, and knead dough, ensuring skills passed from one generation to the next. The aroma of baking bread drifting through tenement corridors created a sense of belonging despite overcrowded conditions. Sunday dinners held particular importance, representing both religious devotion and cultural continuity. On those evenings, laughter, stories, and music accompanied plates of roast meat, potatoes, and vegetables, even if portions were small. Through resilience, creativity, and cooperation, Irish immigrants transformed the simplest ingredients into sustaining meals that nourished body, spirit, and heritage. In every bowl of stew and every slice of bread, there existed a quiet determination to survive, succeed, and honor the homeland they carried in memory. These foods were not extravagant, yet they formed the backbone of daily life in 1920s Hell's Kitchen, shaping a culinary legacy that would echo throughout New York City for decades. By the late 1920s, Hell's Kitchen had become a tightly woven Irish community where food served as both survival and celebration, and even the humblest meals carried stories of migration, struggle, and hope. Families often began their days with simple oat porridge stirred slowly over small stoves and flavored lightly with salt or a spoon of molasses when available. Bread remained central, baked at home or purchased from neighborhood bakeries and sliced carefully to last through the week. Thick vegetable soups filled with potatoes, carrots, onions, and bits of barley simmered for hours, providing warmth in apartments that were difficult to heat during harsh winters. When wages allowed, a small roast beef or pork joint might appear on the table, surrounded by boiled cabbage and turnips, creating a meal that felt abundant despite modest portions. Fried sausages, known as bangers, were cooked in cast iron pans and served alongside mashed potatoes, offering comfort after long workdays. Leftover meats were chopped finely and folded into shepherd's pie, ensuring that nothing edible was wasted. Tea continued to anchor daily life, poured at breakfast, shared in the afternoon, and offered to visitors as a symbol of welcome and solidarity. Pickled onions and cabbage stored in jars lined narrow shelves, adding sharp flavor to otherwise plain dishes. On special feast days, families prepared corned beef slowly boiled until tender and served proudly with potatoes, representing both Irish tradition and American adaptation. Rice pudding sprinkled with cinnamon appeared during holidays, bringing sweetness to children who rarely experienced dessert. Fresh fish purchased cheaply from markets was fried crisp or added to creamy chowders, stretching budgets while preserving familiar tastes. Homemade gravy poured generously over bread turned simple ingredients into satisfying plates. Women saved bacon drippings in tins, using them to season vegetables and fry potatoes, maximizing every resource. Pancakes made from flour, eggs, and milk were prepared on Sundays when families sought small joys amid demanding lives. Apples baked with sugar and spice filled rooms with comforting aroma, reminding elders of orchards back in Ireland. Hard cheeses sliced thinly were treasured additions to bread, especially for working men needing portable meals. Even plain boiled carrots and parsnips carried meaning because they reflected the agricultural roots many immigrants once knew. Community events often featured shared stews where neighbors contributed whatever they could, strengthening bonds through food. Children were taught early how to stir pots, knead dough, and respect ingredients, understanding that each meal required effort and sacrifice. Street vendors selling pies, roasted nuts, and hot drinks occasionally provided affordable indulgence for those with a few extra coins. Simple custards made from milk and eggs represented careful budgeting and creative cooking in limited kitchens. Fried liver with onions, though not glamorous, provided vital nutrition for families conscious of strength and stamina. Barley bread, dense and filling, remained popular among older generations who preferred its hearty texture. Soup, bones purchased cheaply from butchers, were boiled repeatedly, extracting every bit of nourishment possible. Even during lean weeks, families gathered faithfully at the table, reinforcing unity despite hardship. Laughter, music, and storytelling often accompanied meals, turning cramped apartments into spaces of warmth and belonging. Food in 1920s Hell's Kitchen was rarely luxurious. yet it embodied resilience, adaptability, and cultural pride. Each recipe reflected a bridge between Old World Ireland and New World America, blending memory with necessity. Through careful budgeting, shared knowledge, and unwavering determination, Irish immigrants built a culinary foundation that would influence New York's food culture for generations. Their meals told stories of endurance, faith, family, and hope, proving that even the simplest dishes could carry extraordinary meaning. In every cup of tea, every slice of bread, and every simmering pot of stew, there lived the spirit of a community determined not only to survive, but to thrive in a new land.